Hello and welcome to the 162nd episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this episode, I'd like to discuss pre-rational, rational, transrational, and maybe something that ties them together. So, in many circles that I've watched, there's this almost this perception of a hierarchy between pre-rational, rational, and transrational. As in transrational, that is the right way of viewing things. Rational is like, yeah, it's the mainstream way of doing things, but there has its limits and blah, blah, blah. And then pre-rational is the dummies, the people that act on instinct alone, like gut feeling and I'll do this and that impulsively like animals. And I just like to reframe that debate a little bit. Obviously, there are many people that understand the subtleties and how to, put these together, but I'll just give you certain, thought experiments to show that each level has its importance and that using them in the right way, in the right setting, in the right context, is what's truly, quote unquote, transrational. So imagine approaching running away from a lion from a pre-rational level, rational level, and transrational level. From a pre-rational level, your instincts take over and you don't think. Like, it's below thinking. You see the lion and instinctively you run to the nearest tree, or you do something, you hide in the grasslands or whatever you do, or you pick up a stick and start yelling and doing some noise. But ultimately it's something that you're not there pondering, and that's the whole thing. It's like, that's the pre-rational way of approaching a problem, is like instinctive gut response, which is, to me, the correct way of doing it in that kind of situation. If you'd approach the situation rationally, well, first of all, do you have the time or the luxury to start thinking about, what are my odds and what am I supposed to do now? Okay, let's get a sheet of paper and consider all of the alternative scenarios and whatnot. I mean, there's just no way. There's no time for rational thinking. Now, if you approach this problem from a transrational perspective, there you might say, what gives? I mean, I'm an eternal soul anyways. This is just the dance of life. I'll just reincarnate into somebody else, or, hey, it's just, I'm not this body. I'm an immortal soul, so I don't care. And that may also not be the right way to approach it, because you're kind of bypassing the pre-rational and rational to go to something like you're now embracing yourself and being part of, I am that lion as well as I'm myself. So I'm actually eating myself through him and blah, blah, blah. You can invent all kinds of spiritual bypassing strategies to approach that. But, the right way to solve that problem, or in that kind of specific situation, is your body should take over, and your body doesn't want to die, right? And so your body knows instinctively what to do and does it. Below thinking. Then let's move on to another scenario. Let's imagine that now you are trying to pick which personal computer, which laptop to buy. If you approach it from a pre-rational perspective, you're just going to act on impulse. Like, you see this ad or something, or you react emotionally to something that somebody says, or an ad, or a marketing campaign or something, and you're going to say, I need this, I'm just going to buy it. And then you instantly buy it. You throw money at it. You don't even check if you have enough on your bank account. You don't care. You buy it with your credit card. You buy it instinctively. Now, that may also not be the right way to buy a personal computer, because if you buy with the impulse and emotions and whatever, and the gut feeling solely, this kind of instinctive, impulsive way, you may end up being disappointed. You may also make a rash decision. If you approach it rationally, though, rationally is probably the best way to approach it. That is, you make a list of all the different models, you compare, you check if you have enough money in your bank account to make sure that whatever, and then you make your pick, and then you buy whatever laptop you're supposed to buy. Now, if you approach it from a transrational level, you're like, okay, so maybe you're overthinking too much. You're like, or overfeeling too much. You're like, okay, let me try to project myself into alternative timelines where I would have bought different models of computers, and maybe that will have triggered a butterfly effect. Maybe if I buy an Asus versus an Acer, I will be actually influenced to write this book, but I'll write it differently than an Acer, and so it'll have different impacts on humanity. And there, I think you're going also too far, because maybe it's one of those decisions where it's like picking an ice cream flavor where it doesn't really have that much of an impact on your future, the timeline, the existence, the universe, whatever. Where it's really the best way to approach it is the rational. Besides, if your rational side is not satisfied, then you may start to say, well, oh, I should have bought this model because it had extra RAM and this one is too slow and blah, 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 which means the rational mind there has to be, quote unquote, in control. Now, imagine yet another scenario where it's more about something bigger, like the meaning of life, or choosing your paradigm, or responses to existential questions. If you use your pre-rational mind is not equipped. It just can't approach any of these questions. It can only just guzzle down a bunch of beers and then talk nonsense and laugh at a party, which is fine. I mean, if you want to do that, but what I'm saying is, like, you can't think about all these complex existential, deeper meaning questions via a pre-rational mind. If you're in a rational mind, you're going to tend to try to exert control over something which is, by essence, not approachable via this methodology of trying to control things. Whether it's questions of destiny, of meaning of the universe, of life, or whatever, as soon as you try to control that and grasp that and limit that, you're also using the wrong tool. Now, transrational may be the right approach there, because you understand the fluidity of things. You understand you rekindle with your subjectivity, but your subjectivity not as impulsiveness, but as an embodied consciousness that knows what can be right for itself at a deeper level than just survival, but not using a blunt or a tool like empiricism and rationality, which tends to try to artificially control something that is organic, that is alive, that is shifting. So, it's almost this idea of like trying to understand where you fit in this global collective organism of humanity. And I think I've done enough videos here for you to understand why. I mean, I would think that the contents of this channel is very much transrational in many respects, because it is transcending dualities like right and wrong, false and true, and all these different things. But what I'm saying outright is that it's not necessarily the right approach to think about everything in that way. And so normally these different systems are integrative, meaning when you're at the pre-rational, of course, you can only use pre-rational. When you're at the rational, normally you can use both pre-rational and rational, and you understand why it's still relevant that you have impulses and instincts. And the wrong way, I mean, people that are in rationality and are too deep in rationality think that rationality actually can substitute itself and completely quash pre-rational, because pre-rational has no usefulness, whatever. It's like, oh, these are animals, whatever. But actually, your animal instincts are very important in many different ways. And normally, the healthy way of doing that is integrative. And then when you move to transrational, you also understand that rational and pre-rational have their legitimacy in certain contexts. And so the wisdom is to understand where to use these different levels depending on the context and the situation. And even more than that, sometimes it's even more powerful when you can align those three levels. When your body agrees with your mental rational mind, with your, say, your cosmic mind, or your cosmic, or your higher self, as they say in spirituality, or your divine instinct, let's put it that way. Your animal instinct, your human, mental, rational mind, and your divine instinct, intuition. When those three are aligned, I think that is probably the most powerful decisions you can make, from those being aligned with these three. And that, I mean, I've never experienced it, to be honest. I've never experienced that kind of alignment, because I always have like some kind of discrepancy. Like either my rational mind does not agree with something that my higher self would agree with, or my body doesn't want to follow because it's afraid and whatever. So it's actually very difficult to fully integrate those three levels, because sometimes your body, like typical thing, right? You have a very, very proficient athlete that has trained his body to do certain tricks, or do certain acrobatic figures or whatever, and his mind is then overriding his body in doing things that are dangerous. Like, for instance, these acrobats that are, or these people that are doing stunts, that are jumping with a motorcycle over 20 cars or something. Their body is not like, yay, I'm gonna die, but it's great, and so they have to kind of override that, and eventually their body they can get it to cooperate by reassuring it constantly that it's okay, you're not gonna die, you're not gonna die. But if you try to make anyone do that with a motorcycle, they're going to completely break at the last minute or something. They're not gonna carry through with jumping over those 20 cars. And so that's one example where you have to align your rational mind, where you can do it, and your pre-rational, whereas your bodily wisdom that's like, hey, are you crazy or what? You're going to fly with a motorcycle over 20 cars? Are you insane or something? Let's just go back to your couch and sip a drink or something. And your transrational also, it's like understanding that maybe this is your calling and that you're going to inspire people via this. It's not just you're doing it for the sake of doing it, but there's a kind of a higher calling behind the fact of jumping over the motorcycles, because you just feel that it's there's just more to it, right? It's like, again, it's like this, you're picking a job not because it's going to get you the most cash or whatever. You have this rational parameter that you're trying to hit, but you understand that there's something deeper there. You feel a calling that is not base, that is not about, I just need money to survive. And you're not in a rational mind, which is something like society said it was good for this and this and this and this objective reason, so I'm going to do it. But you're more in the transrational mind of there is this higher calling. And when you can align those three, then it's really, really powerful. And sometimes it can take a long time before those three aligned, and I don't know how to do it yet. I have to be honest. So if any of you have a trick or some kind of, I know I could how to use them, I think, in isolation, and that's the problem. Like when your pre-rational is not in agreement with your rational and not in agreement with your transrational, then it can feel very uncomfortable. And I feel like that very often. Like I think I've gone very far in spirituality and understanding the universe, existential, things. But then sometimes I get caught up by, paying my bills and stuff, and I'm like, oh, shit, and also finding my place. And that's going to be in an episode about spiritual challenges, finding your place. But I think I've already touched on that, where you fit when you've moved on to another paradigm, another worldview. So yeah, those are challenges. And so alignment is also, it's like the silver kind of bullet. It's like the ultimate realization is to be able to align all three dimensions of your being, and the pre-rational, rational, and transrational, and going in one direction. And that's really powerful. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and talk to you in the next episode. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Bye-bye.